The samurai, a name that conjures images of battle, loyalty, and the sharp edge of the katana. But in Edo, Japan, something remarkable happened. For more than 2 centuries of peace under the Tokugawa shogunate, the sword went silent, and the mind awakened. This is the story of how the warrior class turned inward, building schools, philosophies, and disciplines that reshaped Japanese identity itself. Welcome to Samurai Mind Training, the lost schools of Edo, Japan. When Tokugawa Ieyasu unified Japan in 1603, the age of civil war ended. For the first time in centuries, peace became the norm. Yet peace came with a strange consequence. The samurai, Japan's warrior elite, found themselves without war. Thousands of men trained to fight suddenly had no battles to wage. So they adapted. The sword remained on their hip, but their daily life was dominated not by combat, but by writing reports, managing taxes, and studying philosophy. Over time, this gave birth to a new ideal, the scholar-warrior, or Bunbu Ryodo, the dual way of pen and sword. To train this new generation of samurai scholars, each domain built its own official school, known as heihō. These weren't battle academies, but moral and intellectual training grounds. Samurai children entered around the age of 7 or 8, learning Confucian ethics, Chinese classics, and mathematics. A typical day might begin with a bow to the teacher, followed by reciting passages from the Analects of Confucius. Lessons weren't about cleverness, they were about character. The goal was not to question, but to cultivate virtue, loyalty, and restraint. The most prestigious of these schools was the Shoheiko in Edo, founded by the Hayashi family under the shogunate's authority. There, future leaders memorized Chinese classics and debated questions of loyalty and duty. In Kumamoto's Jishukan, students were required to reflect daily on moral failings. In Choshu's Meirin-kan, ethical education would later produce reformers who helped overthrow the very shogunate that created these systems. Alongside Confucian study, samurai sought a different kind of wisdom, one that dealt not with ethics, but the mind itself. Zen Buddhism had long appealed to warriors, but during the Edo period, it became a core part of samurai mental discipline. Through silent meditation, or zazen, samurai practiced observing their thoughts and emotions without reacting. They sought the state of mushin, no mind. In that state, one acts without hesitation, guided by instinct refined through training. Another principle, fudoshin, immovable heart, taught them to stay calm amid fear, humiliation, or temptation. These ideas shaped not just swordsmanship, but administration, leadership, and daily life. Zen masters like Takuan Soho and Yagyu Munenori taught that true mastery of the sword meant mastering the self. The sword, they said, was merely a mirror for the mind. When the mind is still, even a sword stroke can be an act of harmony, not destruction. By the 1700s, martial arts, bujutsu, had evolved into budo, the way of the warrior. The focus shifted from technique to moral cultivation. Heihō, or strategy, became a path to understand the mind itself. Yagyu Munenori's Heihō Kadensho and Takuan's Fudochi Shin Myoroku linked swordsmanship to Zen. The enemy was not the opponent in front of you, but the weakness within. Every strike, every pause, every breath became a form of meditation. Through repetition and ritual, martial practice trained patience, humility, and precision. It was not preparation for war, but for life. Yet not all samurai education was pure philosophy. The shogunate understood that knowledge could be power and danger. The Hanko schools were also tools of social control. By teaching Confucian ethics and loyalty, they molded samurai into obedient bureaucrats. The lessons of self-discipline served not only personal growth, but political stability. Even private academies like Ogata Koan's Tekijuku, which taught Western medicine and science, operated under watchful eyes. The message was clear: study, but don't rebel. Think, but don't question authority. The samurai spirit of education didn't belong to men alone. Samurai wives and mothers often ran the household, managed finances, and taught moral behavior to children. In some domains, widows even held official stipends and carried out administrative duties. Their mental training emphasized endurance, humility, and quiet strength, the invisible backbone of the samurai order. When the samurai class was abolished after 1868, Many believed their way of life had vanished, but their spirit lived on, in schools, companies, and even the Japanese work ethic. The focus on self-discipline, respect for hierarchy, and group harmony can all trace their roots to the Edo samurai academies. The sword may have been set aside, but the mind training continued, passed down quietly through generations. In the end, the greatest battle the samurai ever fought was not against an enemy army, but against their own desires, fears, and doubts. They discovered that true mastery, whether in war, art, or governance, begins in the mind. And perhaps that is why their legacy still echoes in Japan today. The sword rusted, but the mind stayed sharp. If you enjoyed this journey into Japan's hidden past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.